All right, we're doing this a little bit later than usual. I mean, I always try to start at 10, but sometimes by virtue of staying up late, I'll miss the mark. And usually when that happens, I just don't really get too caught up over it. I mean, a lot of times people don't show up until maybe 10 or 20 minutes into the discussion anyway. And it's just one of those things I accept where I have the stated like goal of starting at a certain time, and then I more often than not probably won't start at that time. Not because I don't want to, but sometimes I'm still asleep. I know that I woke up about an hour ago, and I was getting ready to start, or at least I wanted to get up and start, and then I just went back to sleep. So it happens. It's just one of those things I kind of accept where it's always nice to have like a desired goal of when you want to do something, but then the realism of what actually happens kicks in and you're like, oh yeah, forgot. So I've spoken a lot about how difficult it's been to find employment, how a lot of times I will sit here some days and just apply and apply and apply and apply and have it could be 10 applications I do. Um, just several of them in instances. And I'm not going to make it sound like every day I'm just applying to all these different places, but there are typically multiple days a week where I'll go on a website somewhere that's been able to net me a position in the past, and I'll go there and apply and then hear nothing back. Or if you do hear something back, it's a dead end. So I've had at least 4 or 5 interviews over the past 2 months, and the first one was for a position with some kind of sales company. And, the interviewer, I guess, liked what I was saying to them. And I was all set and gearing up to go and actually do the last part of the interview, which was to come into the physical building. And then I found out that the place they're located in is roughly an hour's long drive away from where I am. So probably like an hour and a half, just some whole other town. And this really upset me because when I go to the website I go to, I always put in the coordinates like, hey, I'm located here. I'd like stuff that's within a certain amount of miles. So I was upset because, first of all, the place didn't even mention where they were, as in didn't tell me they only had one main facility until right after I accepted going to the interview space. And secondly, the site itself showed how glitchy it was to where I would even get matched up with a place that's located, on the other part of the state effectively. So that went nowhere. Then there was another position where it was for this it's some kind I'm not gonna say what it was because they're not worth even acknowledging in that manner, but they had me drive over to their headquarters, which took 40 minutes to go there. Then I had to park and pay for the parking, pay for 2-hour parking to speak to these people for 10 minutes. Then when I actually talked to them, they made it seem like, they're willing to hire and they're looking for people, the usual scam. And I had a bit of a excitement at the idea of working there because it seemed like somewhere that would be, I won't say befitting of my abilities, but at least it didn't seem too difficult. Like if they told me things, I could pick it up. Heard nothing back. There was another position with this agency where they're selling stuff, and I spoke to that person this past either Monday or Tuesday, and the person, woman laughing over the phone, same old nonsense where they act like they're so interested in talking to you. Um, and after answering all the questions, showing that I have experience with the stuff they're talking about, here we are 5, 6 days later, still nothing. Now, I mentioned before that my circumstances as far as like, who I live with have changed. And I had a conversation with this person roughly a few days ago, and they were talking about how expensive it is out here, right? And that what they would ultimately like is to see me, get a job and then be able to assist them with paying for the place. And I said, well, unfortunately, uh, I don't think that's going to happen. And I told them it has nothing to do with my lack of willingness to work. It has nothing to do with my refusal to go to a job. It's simply that these places do not hire people. And if they do, they usually get rid of them after several weeks or a month. We've discussed hire to fire before. So I told them, I'm not going to try and convince myself because I've had days where I go, you know what? I want to get a job again. I'm tired of this, stagnant crap, right? Because I don't enjoy being unemployed. It's not something I'm a fan of at all. So during those days where I get the little brief boost of motivation, I go and apply to sometimes a dozen places, sometimes even more than that. And it always ends up being the same thing where you apply to all these places, you might hear back from maybe two or three of them, and it's all dead ends. I mean, I just get so sick and tired of having my time wasted. Like instead of having me drive out to downtown and back for what was that 80 minutes, I could have been at home sleeping or doing something actually enjoyable. That's why I said that with these jobs, I'm so frustrated because there's something wrong with the idea that a person who wants to work, who applies over and over and over and over again to places, just cannot get anything. And if they do get something, it's another one of these hire to fire schemes. We talked about the retailer from last year. Oh, we need people. You're the first one to show up to the interview. And then, you get hired. And then after like 2 or 3 weeks, they start making their little subtle threats. Stuff like that is just not appreciated. And it goes back to the second part of my irritation, which is that a lot of these places, because people have these insta fix solutions, right? Oh, just if you want to be able to take care of yourself, just get a job. And what's comedic about that is we talk about rent out here, right? And you don't even have to be like a major math student to figure this stuff out. So several places out here, the average price is 1,800, but several places are now going for 2,000 because they're bumping the rent up even more. If someone makes a little bit over 500 a week because taxes reduce what they make, what sense does it make for you to tell them to take their 2,000 they make every month and use all of it to pay this rent? And if they have any other things they'd like to do, such as eat, such as have a phone, oh well. And that's my point, that even if I were able to get a position that it gave me 40-hour work weeks, which I've had before for brief intervals, it still isn't going to be enough. And what's so interesting to me is that people know, thanks to inflation, the prices on things have increased, right? Um, People know this as a fact that the things cost more now than they ever have before. Prices are increasing. And another thing that people know is that we're seeing more and more that adults are living with their parents or with some other person. I don't say that to make fun of anybody, but I really don't know anyone that's around the same age as me who's not living with either a parent or some other person that they're closely related to. Like I kid you not, even my best friend who has a degree, went to school. He didn't get price gouged out of it. His parents actually assisted him with, doing it, with paying for it, excuse me. Still has the same struggle of the rent costs too damn much and the jobs do not pay enough. And I said, it's really insane to me that you have these people. Sometimes it's relatives of mine, and a lot of times it's relatives of mine, who just in their mind believe that when something bad happens to you, anything, right? But like, let's just particularly this job thing. If something bad happens to you related to this job stuff, it's your fault. I think I mentioned before that I had roughly two. It's a little small group of them, two or three relatives who basically convinced themselves that I just was this very lazy person who didn't want to work. And when I would work somewhere and then get fired after a few weeks or a month, they also convinced themselves that I would quit the job. I would just get tired of going in and just quit. Um, and this is BS, right? And they very simply could have asked me, "Hey, why did you stop working here?" But instead of doing something as simple as asking, "Why did you stop working for this place?" and then, finding out that I was fired, they would rather just create fan fiction and peddle a stupid narrative about me not wanting to work, in spite of the fact I apply to places all the damn time. I'm not even joking. Sometimes the like just applying to jobs feels like a job in and of itself with all the traveling and interviews and filling out applications. It's really not even like funny. Just the amount of stuff you have to do to even be on the radar of these places is really insane. And like I said, I've just been burned too many times to still believe in the fables, right? Like I used to have this dream. And I'm not talking about like me going to sleep. I'm saying, like a goal, fantasy, desire of you work somewhere, maybe it's paying you 500 a week, 600 a week, and you're getting roughly like 2,000 something a month, and you have some apartment. Let's say it's 1,500, 1,300, because everything's over 1,000. You never can find anywhere. Even rooms for rent are over 1,000 at this point. Um, but you find somewhere and you're able to live there, and you can just be to yourself. Maybe it's not that big, but it's fine because you're a single person, right? You don't really need like this giant space to do stuff, especially if it's your own place. And it was so crazy to me that instead of finding that dream, which is something that I know a lot of people have, to be able to work and to, if not buy your own home, at the very least have a stable living standard where you don't have to rely on anyone else. Instead of having that come to fruition, it's really just a matter of you're going to have these places that if they don't ignore you outright, they'll hire you for maybe a few weeks or a month, and they'll try to trick you into thinking that they're going to keep you on, right? That they're interested in seeing you improve and progress. But in reality, they're plotting your downfall from the moment that you even sign up as a new employee of theirs, because they're constantly looking for things to complain about. They're constantly trying to like find stuff to get mad over. I mean, I'll never forget with regard to the place I worked the year before last, how as someone who on my application was honest and said, "Look, I've never done this type of work before. I'm not familiar with food and kitchens and things of that nature." Being hired by a manager who knows that, and then at the end of your first week and your first day of doing things in the kitchen, being threatened with being fired over not knowing how to do these things that the guy who hired you knew you didn't know how to do back when it happened. And I also said that because I've really shattered the illusion of, if I just am respectful and decent, I might be able to stay, because that's not a thing anymore. It's like a joke to me to even work for these places to begin with. Like the last position I had, where I was lured in partially because they were talking about getting rid of this other person who wasn't showing up or doing the job as well as they would have liked, and hired me on permanently. You know, I made jokes about how, oh, they're not, this is my last day, somebody's going to complain. And that's, self-deprecation, but it's also the result of working places where I know for a fact they'll get rid of you like that, just chop you away. Oh, thanks. And I was I was really just kind of watching some of the stuff, because I sometimes look at the places I go to and get stuff from. And I'm telling you, it's like I really do sit there scratching my head wondering how all of these various people who I mean, I've seen people at jobs make mistakes before. Sometimes they don't give me a straw, sometimes they put an item in the wrong bag. There's people make errors, right? They're not perfect. And what drives me crazy is it feels like if I work somewhere, I have to be perfect or else I'll get fired. But then if someone works for another place, even the same place, they don't have that same cloud of harshness imposed on top of them. I mean, I was talking about how at the retailer last year, pretty much everyone that worked there, especially, people who had served in the front, which we all did at some point, was getting a negative review on this website. And I was saying that one of the reasons I received the most in the period that I did is because for a solid 2 weeks, I was the main person working in the front of the store. So you're going to give it makes sense that more likely than not, the person who's going to get negative reviews is the one that people are seeing the most out of any employee there by virtue of that person running the store for 8 hours that day or for several days on end. And I said, it's crazy to me that other people are getting bad reviews. Again, sometimes over stuff that's not in their control whatsoever. And no one is being threatened with being gotten rid of besides myself. And I was like, this is really crazy, you know? Um, but that's why I said if a job wants to fire somebody, they don't need a good reason. They can just make something up. I mean, like I said, when I applied to that retailer, I was never told about, oh, by the way, we have this website that people go to complain about our employees, and if you get enough negative reviews, faceless individuals can decide to end your employment. They never mention that, and they never mention that because they know that sounds unappealing. They know that's ridiculous. They know that's just not something that would entice anyone to work for their stupid company. Um, and like I said, I really started to notice what is something of a scam in and of itself. The idea that these places are constantly, putting up their now hiring sign and then getting rid of people that they hire to supposedly find someone better. And it really drives me nuts that you have this lousy system where a majority of people who participate in it are still barely able to substantiate their own standard of living, because we were talking about 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And you have apartment costs that seem to just increase every year with largely stagnant wages that if they do go up, it's like by a few dollars. And people really have convinced themselves that all you need to do is just get a job and then you'll be able to live at one of these places that eats up your entire month's worth of work, um, just with the rent itself. And I said the worst part is that I swear, out of all the people I know that are my age, I don't know any of them that have actually succeeded in this stupid system. I don't like I said before, friend that lives with his parents, think that with a baby, works alongside the guy that knocked her up. So I don't I don't know anyone who actually is capable of making it in this stupid system that's not if that is either not getting major support from someone else, um, or just altogether is not capable of being able to. I don't know. It's just it's one of those things where I wish people would accept the fact that if we have so many adults who live with their parents or with somebody else, maybe there's something wrong with the system instead of the person. And if we have jobs that are going to hire somebody and then get rid of them after a couple of weeks or a month, maybe there is a problem with that. Maybe there's something about that that should be condemned and we shouldn't just blame the person every time something happens to them. It's crazy. People always want you to feel empathetic toward them, but if you expect it in reverse, don't count on it. Just get a job. I wish it was as easy as they make it out to be. I really do. Wish I could just snap my fingers and then, oh, now look, suddenly I'm working somewhere. But it's not that simple. And it's a big part of the reason why I just became so disenfranchised with doing this stuff and participating in it. Because like I said, jobs are supposed to be something that stabilizes your standard of living. And when people who have them are legitimately incapable of saving anything and they're just constantly from the time that they're you know in their 20s to their 40s, like having to every week, if I don't make this, if I don't go every hour, oh man, I'm doomed. I think something about that is really screwed up. I do. Because one person was talking about, why don't you just get two jobs? Like, yeah, so and I said that really shows you how demented people are. They believe you should have to work 50 something hours a week just to make ends meet, like just for the sake of being able to afford your living standards, which is again the most basic of things. Like if you saw how tiny some of the places were over here and the amount of money they expect from it, you would be laughing. I mean, I saw some apartment buildings that were going for 4,000 a month, and they're some of them are no bigger than a bedroom. Like they're very small, and they want so much for so little. But that's why I said these places are just really ridiculous. And I swear I don't know anyone who can afford this stuff that is around the same age as me. I don't know anyone who's able to do this besides people who've had some job where even if they're not getting paid that much more than minimum wage, they're still their position is still stable within the company. They've been working there for like 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm like, that's what scares me because people like ask for solution. I don't know what else to tell you. It really seems as if for just until the end of time, I'm going to keep applying to places and either hearing nothing back, or if you do get hired by somewhere, it's a few weeks, and then after that, they're giving you your pink slip. Um, and I'll have people who call me lazy and they accuse me of quitting the job even though I didn't. And this is just how things will go forever. I mean, like there doesn't really seem to be an upside to this stuff. And you look at the pattern; it stays the same every year. It's just really frustrating. Because, like I said, I don't enjoy being unemployed. It's not fun for me. It's not something I prefer. But it is something that people do a pretty good job of trying to pretend it's appealing. As far as like you must have done something wrong. You must have upset this person. And I'll never quite understand how you can have a person who, again, every time they get hired somewhere, they show up on time, they do the stuff that's asked of them, um, and you're constantly capable of finding ways to say this was your fault, you made this happen, you made this place not hire you. I mean, I saw one person who, I kid you not, they were talking about if you had this certain hairstyle, maybe this place will hire. And I was like, this is a job where you assist the elderly, but secondly, this is a job where when you went to the interview, the people that were supposed to interview you came on time, right? They don't come until 40 minutes after the fact. So if anyone should be criticized, it should be them. Imagine what I would look like. I'm running a business I tell people come in at 12 o'clock. They come at 12, and then they don't hear from me until like almost one. Like that's ridiculous and absurd. And that certainly happened back in either September or October. So what I'm getting at here is there's this really strong capability that people have of just constantly blaming me. I mean, it's insane. Like sometimes I'll really sit there and be like, this is the full extent of my employment where I work somewhere for a few weeks or a month and then get let go of or fired or whatever. And then I go and apply somewhere else or several other places for sometimes several weeks, sometimes several months. If I hear anything back, it's a dud where they just don't hire you altogether. And if you finally get hired by somewhere, it's the same old crap of, a few weeks of this, and then we're going to let you go. And the same rinse and repeat. It's like, again, this is why I don't make any attempts to look for a place my own because I don't have a stable income. Even if I work somewhere, there's always the fear and the very legitimate concern, thanks to the experiences that I've had, where after a few weeks or a month, they're going to get rid of you, even if you do nothing wrong. I mean, look at the last place I worked. One of the things that lured me to them was the promise that, oh, we're thinking of getting rid of this other person because they're not doing their job, and if we like you, we can keep you on. And sure enough, I worked for those bastards for the rest of the year and still didn't get hired on permanently. This person was talking about they always like to they have their little condescending terms. They're like, maybe you can find a little job and you can get some coverage from that, referring to healthcare. And I said, well, I don't think you should. Well, we're going to talk. Start getting into some political stuff. I don't think your access to healthcare should be determined by your employer. So, and also I know that these places are not hiring, or if they do, they're not going to, you're not even going to be on one of them long enough to actually use whatever benefits they have. So I guess if I get sick, I'll just end up dying from, lack of access to healthcare and it being tied to employment, which for me shifts every couple of months or weeks. So it's just another reminder of how garbage the system is. Hey, look, let me tell you about this new healthcare plan that we have. Person who we're going to have working for us for 2 or 3 weeks before we get rid of. They want us to live on working our butts off and then make finding a job the most miserable experience an adult can face. Yeah, man. Like I'm not kidding. I've had places where they just want to do a phone interview. I've had places where they want you to drive for sometimes 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. And then when you go there, nothing happens. Like I said before, I'm still kicking myself for even going to that the one I mentioned that took 40 minutes to go, and then like you have to pay for 2 hour parking, just talk to them for 10 minutes, because it really was just this big waste of time. And it's even crazier when you consider that they make it seem like they're interested in hiring you, but they're not. And I ask people, what is your solution to this? What, like, you get a job, which again, they'll get rid of you after a month, but let's pretend that doesn't happen, even though it does. Um, and then you're making 2,000 a month. And remember, some of these jobs, they won't you tell them you want to work full time and they hire you on part time. So like that's even worse because now you have to get two to even have a chance of living anywhere. And we've discussed this before, but some jobs will be antagonistic toward you working for someone else. Like they'll schedule stuff that conflicts with the other place. So let's pretend you get hired by somewhere full time and they're not going to fire you in a month, even though they actually are plotting to do that from the second you start working for them. So now you're making on the minimum wage a little bit over 500 a month. Excuse me, a week. My mistake. So 500 times four is 4 weeks in a month, 2,000, and your rent is 1,800 or 2,000, like roughly around the latter parts of 1,000 and the beginning of 2,000. So when you pay your rent, a majority of the money you made from this month is now going to be gone. And you have to remember, you also need money for gas, which like over here to fill up a whole gallon, like the whole, thing for me is probably like 50 or 60. So you need money for gas, which is already like half $100. You need money for food, which could be like 50, 60, 70 a week, depending on what you like to eat and how much it costs. Do you see where, and we haven't even gotten into a phone bill and lights. I mean, who can afford this crap? And the worst part is, if you didn't have to pay such ridiculously high rent, you'd be able to do this. Like, imagine if the rent was 1,000 or just like 900 or $800. Then suddenly I can pay for everything else. But I can't do it if my entire check is eaten up by the rent. So, like I said, I'm probably for the rest of my, and I hate saying this because I really don't like it, but it's something that the pattern has been laid out. I will probably for the rest of my life have to live with someone else, and the possibility of them being able to just, throw me out like a piece of garbage anytime they want. Not because I want to, not because I don't want to work or refuse to work. It's just not enough. It's just not enough. If you're so against me working for another company, then pay me more. But of course, that will require these companies stop being greedy. And we also discussed how they've managed to find a way to pay you less than minimum wage, because when they hire you on part time, oftentimes they do that with the full knowledge that you want a 40-hour work week, which is why I said that for me, if I started working somewhere and I say, hey, I want to work full time, and then they say, oh, you're going to work 3 days or 2 days, I would quit instantly, because it's not sustainable. I can't live off of 10 hours of work a week. So it's all in the same vein of like denying you as many opportunities to actually support yourself as possible. Because I said before, employers have this really weird thing where like dichotomy, where they need people, like they need people to run their businesses, but then they also feel like individual employees are this expendable, disposable waste. And it's really sad, because it shows you that when people reach a certain level of success, they start to kind of view, especially in the business world, those that have made them capable of reaching that success as just trash. Like, oh, I'm on the board of this company. This person's getting negative reviews, just like everybody else, but they're the newest person. Get rid of them. It's really sad, just because it shows you that people are not, they just don't care about each other. Dude, that's my favorite part about people that say stuff like that. They don't even acknowledge all of the requirements you have to even go through to get the position, where like school and how many years I mean, they're when they write stuff like that, I don't even bother saying anything usually. It's just another one of those insta fixes. It's like the people who say just start your own business. Doing what? Start your own business. You're smart. Yeah, people do not like having adult conversations about things, or if they do weigh into it, it's usually a non thought out response. Like if I said, "Hey, I'm trying to have my own place, but this job doesn't pay enough. Get two jobs. Work one Monday through Friday, from 9 to 5, and another one from 5 to 12, or work the other one on the weekend. Get no days off ever." It's really crazy to me how everything else is affordable except actually like having somewhere to live. I'm really not even joking. Like everything else is affordable for me anyway, except having somewhere to live. Like I can get food, gas, phone bills like 100 something. Like everything else, if I work one of these jobs and got a 40-hour week, I could pull off. But the rent over here is just ridiculously high, and it seems to get bigger and bigger every year. Seems like someone has said something really stupid. Okay, become a dentist. How exactly do I go about that? A customer merchant says, "What if my two jobs don't allow allow for that arrangement? What if their schedules conflict? Common sense really isn't common anymore." The only thing, and I was thinking about because I said, "Oh, we can work one job Monday through Friday, another one Saturday and Sunday." But another thing is, a lot of jobs have it to where they include when they ask you questions, "Are you okay with working on the weekend?" So there's still a chance to conflict there too. Even if you try to say, "Okay, well, I have 2 free days. Let me put another position there." So yeah, it's that's why I said like people just they don't think when they write stuff. I'm gonna type in becoming a dentist. Let's see what this what this yields. Because the way he wrote it, he makes it sound like you can just walk in to some place, apply, and then now you're opening people's mouth and getting rid of cavities. Okay, this website's called Shemazian Academic Cons. So this is an accredited website. Becoming a dentist requires a significant investment in your education. The vast majority of dental students require a bachelor's degree to apply, with only a couple of schools offering accelerated admissions after just 2 or 3 years of undergraduate studies. Okay, so that already disqualifies that comment because if someone's trying to get a job to live month after month and they don't have enough at this point, do you really expect them to like hold out hope for a job that they're not even going to be able to get until they go to school, which will take 2 or 3 years. So by the time you're even able to actually become a dentist, it's already been like half a decade anyway. That's why I said, man, people write stuff and they don't even think; they just type crap on the keyboard. Like it's crazy. Financial aid guarantees you'll be able to pay for bachelor's and dental school, but you'll still have to spend multiple years going to school just to be able to take care of yourself. So again, your solution is still based off of multiple years of having to do something just to get the piece of paper that is still not guaranteed to get you a job, let alone be able to support yourself. That's not even considering the amount of studying and course you have to go through to even become. And remember, if you're an adult who doesn't have someone to take care of you, that means you have to go to school to get your bachelor's degree while working somewhere and trying to make ends meet in the meantime. That's why I said people just they really just write stuff. Like they just pull out the keyboard and they're like, just do this. Just type this. I mean, like the way that that was written, it sounds like, oh, I'm going to become a dentist, and then the next day you get your degree or you start working in the office. No, dentistry is one of those few careers where you're guaranteed to find a job straight out of school, but you still have to go to school for multiple years while working jobs that do not allow you to take care of yourself because they don't pay enough. So even if I said, okay, I'm going to now become a dentist so I can make, you said 20,000 a month, that still means there's going to be 2 or 3 years of me having to work and go to school at the same time. And then the work I do doesn't even isn't even capable of actually allowing me to live. It's like we're still like scrambling for crumbs in the hope that we'll hold out long enough to get this degree. Yes, what about in the meantime when you have to pay your bills in order to survive? grew to study to become a. That's what I'm saying. See, what's supposed to happen, and I do say this with sincerity, is that a lot of times people who are able to do things like that have support systems. So that's why I said my best friend lives with his parents, and when he went to college, he had a job, but he also didn't have to worry about paying for rent because the place was paid off by his parents, and they paid for his school as well. You know, room and board, right? So that's a scenario where someone, due to the help they're receiving from people, is actually capable of having a chance of moving up. But when you're talking about someone who has to pay for the school themselves along with the rent every month, and they have to work a job and then split their time between the job and studying, it's a hassle, and it's not as easy as people make it sound. Because a lot of times, if someone doesn't study and they're working a job, they don't have the time for it. You know, you work some 8 hour shift, and then you want to you crack open a book and start studying for like 2 or 3 hours, then you're right back to the same old pattern the next day. And I said my biggest problem with college in America, besides the cost of it, is that it really does lure people into this fantasy of, if I just put up with having nothing for long enough, I'll suddenly be able to just take care of myself and have this happy ending. But like I said, there are people who do get actually supported by their relatives or by someone else that is there for them, and they can make it. But a lot of us don't have that luxury. So if I listened to this advice, I would be screwed. Like, think about it. If it's 2,000 a month for rent, and I can only get anywhere close to that number by working 40 hours a week for 4 weeks, I either have to go to school on the weekend, or I have to, like, basically, if I try to go to school during the weekdays, which a lot of these schools are during the weekdays, I wouldn't make enough to support myself now. So what am I supposed to just live out of my car until 2025 or 26, when the degree finally kicks in? I mean, it's just one of those things where, like I said, people, they don't try to understand the nuances of this stuff. They have these insta fix solutions, and they're just not thinking critically about how these things can backfire on someone or be unsustainable. Let me see here. Oh man. You only need to work while in undergrad. Worst scenario, in dental school, you'll be able to sustain yourself with financial aid. You either need to be born to the right parents or marry a rich woman. Well, hell, it looks like the rich chicks are rare. And I mean, we discussed before, gold diggers are usually women that are trying to get something out of a guy. So more likely than not, you would see a woman trying to, play that angle. Heck, we already talked about one of the reasons there aren't as many unemployed chicks as men is because they can, they have a certain asset that they can sell to people, even though it's really not an asset because they all have it. But I'm telling you, man, this, like, if you saw how much we overvalue, like, triangle, it's really sad. Just the amount of stock that people put into random chicks is a real nightmare when you just consider how, like, all of them have the same stuff, and you'll have some guy that's just, oh, I like you so much, you mean it's really sad. So yeah, that rich woman thing won't work out. But yeah, there are a lot of people who do climb the economic ladder thanks to their parents when they have, like, adults that pay for stuff for them. So all they have to do is just study. It's a lot easier than doing it, all by yourself. Who's the purple person? Yeah, I'm sure those OF content creators are just waiting. They're like, Where's the proposals? Really not well thought out answers, which is disappointing because they aren't addressing the nuances of stuff. Unfortunately, that happens a lot of times when you try to have a conversation with people about things. They're just like, well, do this. I'll never forget that one lady that someone told her because she was like a single mother or whatever. They said, "Why don't you just bring your kid to work? Just put him in the locker." And I just have this mental image of her putting the kid in the locker and there's like a little hole for air. So if you're a single parent and you can't afford like daycare, you just bring them to work with you. Just put them in your pocket. So I said, man, people they don't even they don't think at all. They're just like, do this and watch the solution. I think I'm kidding. I told the other person I'm with, I said, I hate to say this, but it's the truth. I'm not getting hired by anywhere. And if I do, it's not something that's sustainable. Let me see. I like what you said about that becoming achievable due to a support system, my virtual relatives and family members who help financially, which is realistically how majority of people in those positions or degrees and jobs are made possible. Yeah, man, like who your parents are determines a lot in this system. I mean, not even like not even acknowledging the parents who pay for all of their child stuff like their tuition and then room and board and then they also pay for their like essentials like food and whatnot. You have families where I'm not joking, some people can get into Ivy League schools because their dad or their grandpa went there. So who you're related to plays a very big part in how successful you are here. I mean, it's really scary. Heck, you even have some people who we were talking about this before, like who get a job because their cousin works there or their brother works there, referrals. I even actually said that the spin artist works for one place. It's a pretty prominent place in my state, and they hired like thousands of people, right? And someone said, why didn't the spin artist ever give you a referral, right? He claims to love you and you're a valued relative of his. Why didn't he give you a referral while you were looking for work? He didn't care. That's the answer. When I was sitting over there drowning for 3 years, it was whatever to him. He wasn't affected. He wasn't having to go to interviews and uh, answer a whole bunch of questions and fill out applications until he got sick of even looking at those things. So that's the real reason that didn't happen. So I said when people aren't affected by something, you can expect them to just be like whatever. Open up a Patreon. I mean, been there, done that. Are you going to go and donate? Dude, that reminds me of that one content creator that was trying to have like a cruise, so like a I guess a trip on a ship, trip on a ship where it would be him and his subscribers. And I guess he would entertain them on it, just all the people speaking to each other. And I remember the reason he canceled it was because only 6 people paid for it. So he gave them all refunds. And to this day, on his channel, people are like, what happened to the cruise? We know you scam people out of their money. And then all the people who actually pay for like, no, he gave it back to me. What happened to the cruise? Did you take the water the money and enjoy the water by yourself? Like it's so stupid. And those who overcame the odds and became successful despite being disadvantaged are some of the most commendable people. I empathize with them a lot. Well, I'm not saying it's impossible to overcome odds. I'm just saying that a lot of times certain people have more support than others. Um, and we know for a fact that if you're older, you tend to have more money, and older people are very likely to spend their money on their relatives or children or grandchildren. So if you don't have someone like that who's backing you up, doing a lot of this stuff becomes very difficult. Which is why I said I was discussing how I don't know in any realistic scenario where it would make any sense for me to try to get a degree to be a dentist while also trying to maintain paying rent somewhere every month. Um, because, like I said, the rent on these houses has increased to such an extent that it basically consumes your entire check. So, for 40 hours a week for 4 weeks, like 2,000 some dollars, rent's 1,800 at minimum, and it's going up. So, again, all of what you've earned. That reminds me of when we had the I'm trying to remember how much the stimulus checks were. I think they were 1,500. Let me see. Well, anyways, that's not important. But the stimulus checks were roughly 1,500 or 1,000 something, right? Um, and I remember that when I spoke to this woman, she lived in another state. Her rent was 700 a month at her little apartment. And I said, because she was like confused as to why I wasn't trying to get the check, and the reason I wasn't trying to get it was because I lived with other people who collectively made it to where I didn't qualify as a person who could receive it because their combined income was exceeded the amount of money that the lower bracket of money that you would have to even qualify for it. But it was so interesting how she made it sound like this check was so great and amazing, and she was able to pay her rent with it. And it's like, I don't know anyone whose rent is so low that that check could have saved them a month of trouble. Like that's why I said rent out here compared to rent everywhere else is just it's night and day different. Like, yeah, you have $700 rent, so your 1,000 check did enough, but for me, it my rent would just gobble that up and be like, all right, next. That stimulus thing was a freaking mess. I can't believe we had to beg and negotiate with the government to give us our money. I'm not surprised, man. They like you know that how we are. We spend what is it 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 billion on going to war with a bunch of countries that if you ask the average American, they couldn't even name on a map. But if you want a salary increase of $1 or $2, it's too much. So I'm not surprised we had to go through a whole bunch just to get the crumbs. I'm not shocked at all. It's really crazy to think that COVID started 3 years ago, and that person that I got away from, like their stay at home order still hasn't been lifted. Like people aren't even wearing masks anymore now, and they're still like just sitting up. So I said that's the best job ever. You just sit at home on the computer. In the afterlife, you'll be rewarded. Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, I do agree with the sentiment that it's easier to die than it is to live. So that I guess that's part of that same trend where things get easier once you're no longer on this planet. God, I swear this stuff is insane. Like the amount of money that places want. And if I one of these days I want to just do a video where I just show all the apartments around here because what they're doing is really disgusting. I mean, like I said, you have apartments where they're not even big enough to be a bedroom for two people. It's like 1,000 plus 3,000 or, like really crazy amounts. And I'm like, who can afford this? And even if you could, why would you want it? Like if I'm making 4,000 a month, I'm not going to live in some little shack, you know? Like it's weird. But rent is one of the biggest problems with this state. Just the amount of money that these places want for you to live somewhere. And the instability of these jobs is another problem I have. Like I don't even know what you can do to. I guess maybe you could put some kind of thing where those because really it all comes back to the lack of union participation in the economy. Just that you don't have like actual groups of workers getting together to have their own rights. To uh, protest and to be able to negotiate for higher earnings and also the ability to not be fired over just anytime the employer feels like it, that they're able to get away with this because that group isn't as strong as it used to be. Every time I work one of these places, I'm just missing unions. I'm like, man, it would be so much easier if we had all the workers come together and just tell these companies to go jump in a lake. I mean, because they really do treat employees like they're trash, like they're just disposable garbage that they can replace anytime they want. But if you get enough people to rebel against this, a lot of stuff can change drastically. Because really, what you have is a system that's not good, and a lot of people who just kind of live their day to day existence. They don't really want to challenge it at all. Um, and it's sad because this stuff again is unsustainable. It's not something that is easy to live in. It's not something that is enjoyable to live in. The 48 laws of power. One of the laws says to never outshine the master. Perhaps that's why you're getting fired. Well, I already explained why I got fired, but if you want to tell me what it was, even though you weren't there, then be my guest. Now you mentioned, I am curious to see how the houses or apartments over where you are, since you mentioned how stupidly high the rent is. And man, look, I understand if it's a place like the one I had before that was 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. I get where that's 2,000 something like that. That makes sense to me because of how many people would be able to live there. But you're talking about houses where they have 1 bathroom, not even 2 bedrooms. And sometimes the kitchen is like the middle room, like the middle room of the place is the kitchen. And there's a house there's the bedroom on one side, the bathroom on the other. And it's like a little tiny rinky dink L shaped apartment shouldn't cost 3,000, 4,000. Like you have apartments here that are significantly smaller than just regular homes and they cost more or just as much or a little bit less. It's what happens when businesses have loads of applicants they know they can dispose of, and employers wonder why employees who catch on refuse to be used as workhorses. Yeah, maybe join the army and get and get killed in one of our banana wars. Or if you survive, you come back to the US and get treated like garbage. Because what was it, like 20% of the homeless people are veterans? It's like a quarter of them are veterans. And think how crazy that is. Like only because I know the statistic, it's like 1% of all Americans are in the military. So I have to do this extremely rare thing that most people don't do just to survive, like just to have a job. Like what? Why should I care about the boss being insecure about how hard I work? If they're so bothered by it, they should work harder. Yeah, that's kind of weird to me. Like I'm working at their discretion, not the other way around. So if they wanted to take over and be the person in the front, they can have at it. But yeah, the apartments over here are a real joke. I mean, I never thought I'd live to see the day where you can get a 3-bedroom house cheaper than a 1-bedroom apartment, or they're like the same price. I mean, that's why I said, you know, there's something really disturbing about the idea that the smaller the place is, it's either the same price or barely anything less. Like, why would I get an apartment that's 1,800 when I can get a place with 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms for like 400 more dollars? Like it doesn't make any sense. Why would I like what I'm cutting back on is barely anything. Yeah, studios by how much? Like I said, every time I go and look for an apartment, the minimum price is 1,800. I've never seen a single one where it's like only 1,900, 800, even with rooms for rent. So where are these cheap places? I'd love to see them. They're first come, first serve. Well, I haven't seen any of them. Like I said, minimum price 1,800, and it's gotten to where even one renting a room is 1,000 something, which is why I said this stuff is unsustainable. Because even when you try to have just a small, tiny little box placed to yourself, they're still like, hey, you need this much. Studios are cheaper, but they highly depend on what city, town you're on, what their tax rate is. Dude, I'm telling you. I've looked at studios and they're still just as bad. Like, what is he talking about? God, I'm telling you, people just they write anything. I'm looking at studio apartments right now. Here's one where there's a let me see, one bath, 627 square feet. They have 9 available, and the starting price is 2,700, which is crazy as hell. We have one in Hewitt. They have 18 available. Starting price is 3,400. We have one in Satan. This is 3,500. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. Palmetto, 4,300. Like I really I wish people just they could speak at on stuff and like not be as absurd. I really do. That's one desire I had. No, Megumi, if you don't believe me, I can just screenshot this stuff and stick it in the video. Because as I said before, 1-bedroom apartments, little tiny box places where it's just one room or 2 rooms are costing thousands of dollars. They're infinitely smaller than homes, but they cost just as much, if not more. No way I am paying that much every month. Nobody is. That's why we have a bunch of apartments that sit empty. Like there's a whole apartment building where there might be 2 people that live there because it just costs too much. Well, become a landlord then if apartments are so expensive. Okay. If they are so expensive, I mean, hey, can you afford 4,000 a month? I can't. He says if they're so expensive, like I'm faking how costly these are. What's the name of this one website? Apartments.com. Um, this is a studio. It's in, let me see. So I'm just gonna go down the list. One of the first one I see is 1,400 to 1,900. The next one's 2,000 to 2,100. Next one's 2,400 to 3,600. Damn, this one's 3,700 to 6 to 6,000. Oh my god. They have another one that's just it's 2,100 or 199. 2,900, 2,700. So I don't know what, like, he tried to make it seem as if I'm inventing these prices, but I would have no problem screenshotting all this crap and stick it in the video. Like, I'm not making up that stuff out here costs a lot, and sometimes even if you work 40 hours a week, it still isn't enough. So, it's just one of those things where people are going to start denying reality, then there's no point in talking to them anymore. If they're so expensive, it's like, yeah, they are. That's why out of all the people I've seen that have gotten degrees, like in the last 10 years, I don't know any that started living on their own. Um, that stupid relative I was talking about, that person got a degree. Um, when was that, in 2017? And they still lived with their parents after that. So what difference did it make? Dude, I'm telling you, people just start denying reality. They're like, if they want to peddle something, you can bring out statistics. You can show how much this stuff would be like. Well, if it costs so much, it's like, are you kidding me? I'm not cherry picking anything. And the point I was making was, I'd rather not live with someone else for free. Uh, and there's something wrong with the idea that you as an adult have to live with someone else just to have a roof over your head. People don't even know what words mean anymore. They're expensive because the US has a high standard of living. Well, hell, why did that bimbo have an apartment that was 700? The whole US is not like this. That's why my state has the highest record of homeless people, because the apartments cost too damn much, and a lot of the jobs have a very high turnover rate where they'll just get rid of somebody just because they feel like it. Thinking critically is apparently cherry picking. Dude, people don't even know what words mean. Like, I go through and scroll down with the entire list. Everything on that list is like 2,000, 3,000, 1,000 something, and somehow I'm cherry picking. And he's like, I live with my parents. Well, I mean, I that's my point, that there's something wrong with the fact that people who want to live by themselves can't afford to live by themselves, even if they work an entire shift of a week. I don't think you should have to have 2 or 3 jobs just to have your own place. I really don't. I mean, if you want to start going down that route where you just ignore the fact that rent and its price varies from state to state, then this conversation is done. Mm. Move to Texas where it's cheaper. So now you have to travel across the country just to maybe live somewhere, and cheaper by how much? Can you guarantee me that after I whatever the amount of money it costs to move from one state to the other, I've never done it before. Can you guarantee me that I'll have a job after moving out there and an apartment that's affordable or a place that's affordable? They have no homeless people in Texas? Dude, these solutions get crazier and crazier. Just travel to this whole other state. You're shooting You're choosing bad jobs with no room for growth. I'm not choosing anything. It's first come, first serve. Just remember, just like how those studio apartments were. So if somewhere hires me and nowhere else is hiring, I'm going to take it. I don't know how the hell my choice got factored into it when usually these places will just get rid of someone when they feel like it. No attempt to explain. Just do this and it solve all your problems. Dude, people just they don't think critically about stuff. They just write a bunch of weird crap, and then we're supposed to go, "Yep, yep." Bad jobs with no room for growth. What does that even mean? Like all the jobs I've been to have people that started working there a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they're still there. And sometimes they're the manager, and sometimes they're not. Really, that's what drives me crazy. That you have these businesses that actually, with some people, will keep them on and give them higher positions that do pay more. But it's like if you have to work there for 5 years just to be able to afford an apartment, then there's an issue. Yes, let me spend several thousands of dollars so I can maybe get an extra amount of yeah. Okay, keep throwing those darts, dude. We already talked about this before. I mean, it was even at the start of the stream. Where like in general, I'm someone who supports higher education if you don't have to pay some excessive amount for it. But when you're talking about spending thousands of dollars on the premise that after several years of doing that, you'll be able to get some job that pays for it all back, then I think there's something wrong with that. And that's why I said outside of a circumstance like the one my friend had where his parents paid for him to go to school, I really just can't say I recommend it. Like seriously, if I had debt, that anchor by my leg, it would be people like him who would say, "You got yourself into it." Because remember, he's the same person that said, I'm applying for bad jobs with no growth opportunity or something. So I know if the situation were reversed and I had a degree but then was in debt, he would be the same one who was, doing the same old blame stuff, your fault, your fault, your fault, throwing darts. What is this? Pell Grants and student loans. Yes, there are people that take out grants, and there are people who also take out loans, and they still either cannot afford to go or have debt for several years after they leave. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I guess we're getting off topic now. Well, look, I'm tired of all the weird stuff that's been written, so I'm not doing this anymore. I don't know why people can't just have a genuine, nuanced conversation about things that actually affect someone's life. I've been blamed for enough stuff without having to sit here and try to be made to feel bad. But I guess I always have made the mistake of thinking that people online could be trusted as a collective to think about something critically. And you have to remind yourself that we're just not among a lot of adults. There are a lot of people who are adult age. There are a lot of people who have access to the internet, but as far as critically thinking individuals are concerned, it's almost non-existent. He's on to something. He talks about jobs with no opportunities, but he still misses the point we're trying to make. Well, it's dumb because he acted as if I choose the supposedly no, and like I said, no opportunities and bad jobs. It's nebulous. Like what is a good job? A good job, in my view, is one that allows you to take care of yourself. If you work somewhere 40 hours a week and the amount you're making still doesn't allow you to take care of yourself, then it's not good. But it's like his framing of it is you're choosing bad. He says you're choosing bad jobs with no It's like I don't pick these jobs. Whatever's available to me, I take because I have nothing else. So that's where the framing is offending and offensive and just not thought out in terms of its argumentation because it's pretending as if I select these positions when usually they're the only one at the time that's hiring. Yeah, unfortunately, they are so narrow-minded and keep harping on pushing forward all these insta fixes, but these are problems that are not realistic. It's like, oh, you want to be able to take care of yourself? Go to another state where no one you know lives there, and suddenly you'll be able to pay for everything. Even though we have homeless people in Texas as well, but and think how crazy it is. You have to move to an entire other state just to maybe get a job. It's like what? So just completely ignore the cost of moving over there, completely ignore how much it would even cost to like I mean it's amazing to me just the way people make things sound. Oh, just go to Texas. I swear, man, people they don't think at all. Someone who works at a job for a long period of time till they become a manager, would you say they aren't growing or chose a job that has no growth? Well, that's why I said when you use nebulous terms, you're not actually getting at the root of any real issue. I mean, you know, I could say that those jobs were bad for me because I couldn't afford to live from them. But as far as like what is by his definition a good job, it's one you have to go to school for. There's no decent job that you don't have to go to school for, and we know that's BS because plumbers make a lot of money and they don't go to school for it. So it's stupid, man. It's dumb. Just try getting a bachelor's degree. God, it's just you're choosing bad jobs with no room for growth. Dude, they act like I just sat there and was like, I will work at this company. No, they're the only one that is accepting my application at the time, so I'm going to go with them. And remember, I put the title the way it is, Eclipse Empathy, or the Empathy Eclipse, because I was talking about how when something happens to you, you have these people with their ignorant behinds who will just assume and accuse you of things. And almost like, I swear these people are it feels like they just grow out of trees. He was the exact example of that. You have a person who says, maybe you got fired because you outshined your manager. No, I know the reasons why I was let go of, and they have nothing to do with that. But instead of asking me, why were you fired from these places? Right? He would rather create fan fiction. And remember, because people having empathy towards men is just impossible, he would say, "Oh, you're choosing bad jobs." Like, I'm not choosing anything. If it's like, this is the same person that if you got the opportunity to work somewhere, one of these places, and you said no, he would say, "Oh, you chose to not work somewhere, and then what do you expect?" It's like, but if you work there, you're still getting blamed for things going south or you not being able to afford stuff. I don't control what my salary is. I don't control who hires me. I mean, it's stupid. It's really dumb, and I'm not interested in entertaining that for 2 hours. So that's not something I want to foster. The amount of insta fixes they kept sprouting out. But what's disturbing is that this is a conversation that could be really productive, because there are people who work for places where they don't make enough, so they get two jobs. There are workers who get sick of the stagnation of the job that they work, and they organize demonstrations and protest. Yeah, I'm glad you decided to pull the plug on. It was just annoying, man. Like, I told you that my patience for a lot of that back and forth stuff, really, like, the only reason he lasted longer than most of them do is because he wasn't like directly insulting me for most of it. But when you start accusing me of stuff, that's where I start drawing the line. But I said before, a big part of the reason why I don't try to have debates or conversations with these people is because I know how they are, and I know that they like to blame someone for the things that happen to them. Um, so they'll tell the person who applies over and over to jobs that they don't want to be employed. They'll tell the person who um, actively searches for a place to live on their own that they want to live with their parents or with some other relative. And it's just, I don't understand this backwards logic. I really don't. And he couldn't bring himself to ask, did you ever try to go to college? Right? Because he's like, oh, just get a bachelor's degree. It's like, dude, I'm the same person who went to school just consistently all the way up until 2018, when I got into a university where it was out of state, because he's talking about going out of state, right? For to go to Texas. It was out of state. They wanted 30 grand for me to go there. And thanks to loans and grants, it was cut down to 12,000. So it was cut down by more than half. And my relatives refused to pay for it. So I didn't have uh, you know, as someone who was out of high school for just 2 years, 12 grand to give to a school. So that's what happened. But he didn't ask that because he'd rather peddle his narrative. And told you, when I said I was the most blame man of all time, I was not joking. Hey, if he were, he'd be like, well, you shouldn't expect someone to pay 12,000. Like, no, no, no. It was between three relatives. I told them all, you can cut it down to either 6,000 for two of you, because I know one of them didn't have that amount, or 4,000 between three of you. So it wasn't me asking one person for 12 grand. It was me asking three people for 4 grand, or even two people for six. So either way, one person wasn't going to pay all of that. Yes, and this kind of discussion is very beneficial, especially for people who are in this position or who aren't aware of how bad these circumstances are, or these situations are. Yeah, I met, not to like derail this into the chick stuff, but there are plenty of people that came on that on like the Romans were like, I had no idea it was this bad. So there is a conversation that is worth discussing here, but it's messed up by having these people who are not trying to actually discuss things in a nuanced way. Because if I'm talking to someone who is looking for a job or they've been fired or whatever, I'm not going to, as someone who's never met them, go, you know, you're choosing bad jobs. Why don't you do this? Just it's weird. But I do think a big part of why things are the way they are is due to unions being crippled in America. Because Megumi unions, when they were at their strongest, you would get these workers who are like, let's say, work for a company, and they all get together as an organized group, and they're like, "Hey, we want a salary increase, and we're going to protest and boycott going up there until you do this." And the sad thing is, people, even if they're outspent by these really rich, company owners, people in general are still a more powerful force than a group of guys in suits and ties that, make billions of dollars. Because if the people as a group say, we're not working today, we're not working this week until we get an extra $2 or some more vacation days, the companies are going to bend over because they're not going to be able to just replace their whole damn system of people. Like a lot of them run on this idea that you're expendable and you're just this piece of trash. But these places really are lucky that unions aren't as strong as they used to be. And really, what you need probably to happen is for people in positions of power, like whether that's the governor of my state, the mayor of the city, to actually be called to task for not addressing the homeless problem, to put some measures in place to lower the cost of these places. You don't really see an organized effort to create that type of change, and that's why we have such a garbage system over here, where again this state leads in the number of homeless people. That's very true. That would honestly make a change for sure, I feel, as it affects the mass. And what's even crazier is, so we have 40 million people here. If you got, let's say, it could be 600,000, it could be, just some, it doesn't even have to be like half the state or anything, because you have a lot of people who are unemployed. But if you got a majority of workers that work for these companies to say, we're sick of not being able to afford where we live. It's time for these companies to tell that governor that they like so much, because if he gives them all these tax breaks, that you need to lower or put some kind of price cap on how much these apartments can be. Because Megumi, this is actually really interesting. In my state, the minimum wage has been increased several times, but nationally, the minimum wage is the same that it's been since 2009. So it has been increased in over 10 years. Um, and I want to just mention this because it really drives me crazy. I want to make sure I get the price correct, um, the amount of money correct, rather. So where the guy was talking about moving to Texas, right? I thought it was really dumb because, like I said, I don't know why you should have to travel halfway across the damn, you know, country to even have a job. But I make twice as much out here than I would out there. The minimum wage in Texas is $7. So why would I give up 18 an hour for 7 in a state where I have no base of support? So if I go over there and I can't afford stuff, I have no one who I can lean on. I have no one to go back to. Like, I would just be living out of my car basically. But like that's why I said these people, they don't think critically. They just write dumb stuff and then they think it'll stick because reasons. I'm supposed to go to a state where I have no support system and get paid less than half of what I make out here on the premise that it'll be easier to get a job. That's what he claims. He has no proof of that. Um, and if I don't succeed or if I get fired from somewhere, and I can't pay my rent, then I have no one to lean on, and I'm just screwed. Well, Megumi, we have what's called state laws and federal laws. So the state law of California is the minimum wage has to be 18, right? The federal law is the minimum wage is $7. So because that like basically what I'm saying is I would rather stay here than take my chances in states with lower minimum wages because I can't be guaranteed I'll even be able to make enough to like it's one of those things where the problems in other places along with the fact I have no support system out there make me not want to go to them. Dude, you know what's and like I get that you're not into this type of stuff, but you understand where it's really disturbing that the minimum wage has been the same, like the federal minimum wage, the amount that all states are required, they must adhere to this. It's been the same since I was 11. Um, and also I want you to think about this that in some states like Texas, they have not raised it whatsoever. Not by a dollar, not by $2, not by three. I mean, like think about this. To work, if I work 2 hours in Texas, that is the equivalent of working 1 hour out here. So I'm supposed to go to another state where I make less than half of what I already make. Um, and I guess just pray and hope that I find some place where I can that's why I said that people just they don't think. And Megumi, the minimum wage is that low only because or excuse me, what the part that you should be disturbed by as a person who doesn't live in the US is that it's been that same amount again for over 10 years, but also it's been excuse not even 10 years, like what, 14, 15. So it's been that low for almost 15 years. And what's even crazier is that you really think about this. Imagine what rate people would even be able to make if we didn't have a law like that. If they could just hire you for $5 an hour. Like that's really disturbing because it shows you that just how little the people in positions of power in these states care about the worker to where it's like, okay, well, I guess we have to pay you at least 7 an hour. Like that's disturbing. Where if it wasn't 7, it could let's say be 6 and they would be like, well, I guess we have to pay you 6 an hour. It that's really crazy to me. And that was one of the reasons why I was such a big proponent of the healthcare system you have in the UK of single payer, or I guess the was it the NHS? Because over here, I hate the fact that your healthcare is tied to your job when these jobs will throw you away like a empty potato chip bag. And then what? You just can't go to the doctor anymore? I mean, like we were talking about how the apartments over here cost 2,000 something. Imagine me spending basically my whole check to pay for an apartment out here, and I spend a little bit more to get some food for the week, and then I have to go to the doctor, and I get fired from that job, so I don't have coverage. Like it's a really lousy scenario. We do have a similar situation here, but the difference is the minimum wage here will be increasing by just under AE1 by April due to the cost of living increasing. Yeah, well, all I'm getting at is people pay a lot of money for doctor visits and things related to healthcare, and I really believe that that publicly funded system you have over there, just like you have in Canada, much better, and Australia, much better than what we have here. And yeah, I saw that and I was really disappointed, displeased about it. I don't understand it at all. It's crazy to think you have to pay to see your GP over the over. And dude, what's even like what's so funny to me is if you say you're in favor of like single payer, which we basically have for people over 65 with Medicare, and if you say that you want college to be free as it is in other countries as well, you'll have people who will say you just want free stuff, but really we're talking about the bare minimum because like if you institute this system, you still have to pay for your rent, you still have to pay for your car. So if you just want to give people basic necessities for free, they act like you're crazy, like you're trying to just do this big giveaway handout, but you're not. You're saying, "Hey, look, we know the cost of college has ballooned in the last 20, 30, 40 years." I mean, man, if you saw how little college cost back in the 60s and 70s out here compared to what it does now, you would be disturbed. People go to school for like $100. It was it was so much easier. But it's like when you say this to them, hey, people tell you need college to get a good job, right? Okay, why do you have to go bankrupt going to college if you don't have a support system? Like we think that's ridiculous. So we propose making it free, publicly funded. We have publicly funded K through 12. Nobody complains about having to pay taxes so that kids can go to school for free. So why is it that when you turn 18, they tell you to man up and pay all this crap? Like it's weird. People always talk about, oh my God, you want to do a tax increase? I'm like, yeah, a tax increase that saves you money. If you have free healthcare, you don't have to pay premiums, deductibles, or copays. God, like I swear, the most short-sighted nonsense, man. And you know what it is? A lot of it has to do with the fact that in America, we don't really teach people about what happens in other countries. Like I didn't even know about the NHS or any, just like the fact that other countries had free healthcare until becoming like getting into high school and just kind of looking into other places. And it just drives me crazy that like a lot of people out here get elected on the premise that people don't know that other countries have stuff that we don't. Like they're just basking in the unfamiliarity that an average American would have with like just basic differences that we have with other countries. It's really scary because I was also talking about my like I did this stream probably 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago I was talking about my representative and how that's a person where because Megumi, you would think if you're running for office, you're gonna like go and visit the people that you're trying to represent and shake some hands and talk to them and whatnot. But I was, like just thinking about how for the last house race they had in my district, my member of Congress didn't show up at all. I don't remember any town halls, any flyers. They just were like this invisible person who got endorsed by all the bigwigs, like the governor and different other people who are already elected. And that's why like I was contemplating running against them because I don't like the fact that someone can just win an election not because, they worked the hardest, they went and talked to the people and spoke about issues just because they get endorsed by a bunch of other people. And when you look at the ballot, you don't know who anyone else is, so you just pick them. And I just think that's really sad, like that's pathetic. And that's how you know it's a corrupt system. Oh yeah, I mean, Megumi, like again, you don't even have to be into politics to understand that in the U.S. we have a democracy that's run by oligarchs. So a lot of times when people are against, like let's say lawmakers, right? They're against implementing something. It's because they're being paid to oppose certain things. Like for example, when we have mass shootings even if you want to have the most basic bare bones like restrictions on guns we're not even talking about like banning guns, we're talking about like hey make it to where people have to go through a background check, something like that, right? And make some kind of federal law because we have state laws that and people skirt them by just going to another state and getting a weapon there. you'll see people will tell you, "You're trying to take away everyone's rights to a gun," and you're like, "Why are they misrepresenting my position?" Because I'm saying we're not taking away your weapon. We're trying to make sure that crazy people don't get them. And then you find out they're being paid by the National Rifle Association, who donate to their campaign, and their way of scratching the back of the person to help them is to oppose every single measure that has to do with restricting gun access. Um, and you look at a lot of the people that are opposed to actually having single payer, like what you have over there in the UK, and their response is not to say, "Hey, look, man, um, people don't like having higher taxes, and that's like a thing that's hard to sell to voters." Instead of like having an honest conversation about you will pay more in taxes, but you'll receive more money, by not having to pay for these other expenses, they'll tell you socialist takeover of healthcare. They're and nothing is free. They're trying to take over your system and uh, make it government run. And you're sitting here like, what are you talking about, socialist? This is something that other countries have, in multitudes of. Again, places like Canada, the UK, Finland, Denmark, I mean Sweden, like this is again a basic necessity that you want to offer the electorate, and they're being lied to about like how this is part of some takeover, some violent hostile takeover where all their rights are going to be taken away. It's like, what are you just like what? So that's why I said over here, a lot of and then you say to yourself, why are they acting like this? And then you find out a lot of these same politicians are paid by pharmaceutical companies who make a career off of charging people more money for medicine, where you'll have some pills that cost like, let's say $80 in Canada, they can take it over here and bump it up to 500 or $600. And they know that if we actually have either a public option or private insurance, which I don't support because I think just get rid of all the private insurance, um, and the ability to negotiate drug prices, then they really will be doomed because they won't be able to make as much money from ripping people off by selling medicine for three, four, five, six times the price of what it is in some other country. So yeah, we have a very corrupt system. And it's purposely designed to keep, like, I'm considered, even if I'm interested in this stuff, a normal person. I don't have any like donors or aides or whatever. So, and when I say aides, I'm talking about like people that help you with stuff and just like manage whatever. Megumi, I'm telling you, we have the most bizarre elections. Like, you have a candidate who gets endorsed by a bunch of other people that people are familiar with if they're into this stuff, and then they run against a bunch of people that no one's ever heard of, and then they win because they're the only person that anyone knows out of like the whole field. And the cost of campaigning is also, fairly expensive. I mean, if you want to get an ad on TV, you can forget it. And it is a fact that the majority of elections are won by the person who spends the most money. And there are exceptions because money doesn't change votes, but it does influence people's familiarity with the candidate. So, for example, if I'm running a campaign where I only have like $1,000, $2,000, and my opponent has 100,000 that they received from all their wealthy contributors, they can run ads on TV. The woman hater Justin, stuff like that, right? And it's effective to an extent, but it's also an advantage they have over me where it's easier for them to get their message out because of the amount of money they've received from people who, when they get in office, they're going to scratch the back of. Yep, America has always been pretty scary to me, just knowing how common it is for people to have licenses to own firearms. And man, what's crazy is that people will say, "Oh, gun control doesn't work." I'm like, but think about this, Megumi. Imagine if you lived in, let's say, California, right? And over here, you have to get a concealed carry permit. You have to go pass a background check, whatever, right? And you say, you know what? I don't want to do any of that. Now, the way laws are supposed to work is if you really don't want to obey them, you can go to another country, right? Or, like, you're supposed to obey laws. But because we have state laws, if you don't want to go through the laws of to get a gun out here, you can just drive to Nevada or Arizona or some other state with more lax laws on this issue and just get a firearm. Like, you could buy one at a gun show. You can go to a gun store, no questions asked. You pay a price, you get one, and that's really scary because they try to take the people who are attempting to curtail crazy people getting weapons and tell you nothing works. Get ready to get your brains blown out. Um, but they're not doing anything themselves to curtail this. You have some people who will say, "Oh, this is a mental health problem," but they're not talking about investing in mental health research or like getting more therapists available to go and talk to people about what's affecting them. They just use that as something to dodge actually addressing the issue, which is that so many people own firearms. And I think I told you, Megumi, the U.S. is 4% of the world's population, but we have almost half the guns here. It's like 40 something percent of all firearms are in this country. So think about this. We're only 4% of the whole world, but we have almost half the guns. It is insane. And see, that's why I said I feel like you don't have to even be into this stuff to understand how corrupt it is, how backwards a lot of the beliefs that we have or things that we do are. Because like you didn't have to sit through some 2-hour video. I just told you in a few minutes about our corrupt system, and you're like, wow, I really am not surprised about that. Absolutely crazy. Well, you understand what I'm saying? That it's not something that really gets talked about as much. Like for example, I think I mentioned to you like the statistic of how 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. We have corporate media that's and one of the little like schemes they run when they're trying to like suppress information is to just not talk about something. So what this means is that as people are struggling, right, 63% of Americans are paycheck to paycheck, instead of them, if they're a good caring news network running nonstop coverage of how crazy it is that most people who work jobs, if they miss one check, they're screwed. Instead, they're going to talk about a murder trial and what some politician said about somebody else. And you're like, isn't it insane that a majority of the population of the richest country in the world is again paycheck to paycheck? One they miss one check, they're screwed, and there's no coverage about it. You'll only hear something about this from the internet or print sources. You won't see any of it on any of these networks. Even the day that story came out, they didn't talk about it. And they do that on purpose because they know a misinformed and ignorant public is easier to control. If people don't know how bad things are, and they just think, oh, this is just the way things are supposed to be, they're not going to protest. That's what I said, man. I was just thinking of running, I just like the idea of you go to people's doors, you tell them why you're running, and then you get like a few people organized, whatever, and you say, hey, look, there's this stuff I want to tell you about. Because TV, these cable networks, they're not going to mention any of this stuff, but a few people can make a real big difference in terms of getting certain information out. Because the US does have a lot of problems. And unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is basically ignored by both of our major parties, or it's just not really gone into as much as it should be. And it's really sad. Like we have a mass shooting every day, and it's gotten to a point where they're so common that people like you can have a whole week of people getting shot up and no one talks about it. They had this guy back in May of last year go up into this preschool and kill all these children, and they talked about that for like a month to maybe a month and like a week or 2 weeks. Then it was over. But yeah, it is absolutely crazy. Our system has many problems that people just don't want to. They don't. If it's a politician, they usually don't address it because it goes against their best interest of the people that donate to them to talk about it. And if it's a commentator, usually if it's one on the on TV or the internet, they some of them don't know about it and some of them like just don't care. Like they're fine with it. Like I'll never forget the one senator that said that A corporation being able to give a politician $100,000 was free speech. It's like that's not free speech, that's corruption. Because now when you run, you're going to do what's in the corporation's best interest with all these tax cuts, right? Where if you, but think about how crazy this, if you the less money you make, the more you pay in taxes. Like stuff like that's just weird to me. And it's designed to be weird. The people who are financially afloat get more and more breaks, while the people that are at the bottom just keep on scrambling for coins. And it's just a really sad, backwards, messed up system. My favorite claim is when they're like, if you raise the minimum wage, people are going to get fired from their jobs. I'm like, well, if that was true, we could just make it $2 an hour, and I guess everybody would have a job. It's nuts too because like if you raise it by a lot, yeah, right. You go from 18 to 40, okay, people are going to get fired. But if you raise it by $2, $3, they're not going to get rid of you, or they're not going to just have this massive layoff session. And like I said, the biggest problem with that stuff is that you have corporations that are seeking to make as much money as possible, so they purposely hire people who say they want to be there full time, part time, so they can save themselves some more dollars because they don't have to pay you as much. And the other issue is that since we don't have protections for workers, stuff like this is allowed to happen. Because if unions and labor groups were as strong as they should be, you would have it to where you can't just have an employer decide, oh, I'm gonna just get rid of this person. Because what's supposed to happen is there's a 3 month probation period where they keep you on after that period. A lot of these companies are getting rid of people in a third of that time or even less than that time. Like I mentioned before, that the last two places before this previous one, I was there for a month, and you still get gotten rid of in a shorter amount of time than probation is supposed to allow. That's why I said that there should be some kind of, if it's not a federal law, probably a state law about how you need to, if you hire somebody, you can't get rid of them until 3 months after the fact. Again, stuff like that's just designed to protect the worker. Because remember, if you get fired from somewhere, the employer doesn't care if you don't have a place to live or food to or money to buy food. They don't care. So when the corporations show how much they don't care about the worker, it's supposed to be the representatives in the government that are supposed to show their concern for the worker. But instead, a lot of them are bought off by the very same people that they're supposed to be protecting you from. I'll agree with that. Well, what really needs to happen is before it can be done at the federal level, you have to have it done at the state level. Um, so, for example, if I were a representative, because they have a lot more power than a normal person does as far as like being an elected official, I would organize a mass protest where it's like all the people who work for these different drug companies and retailers. I'm talking about just like just people that work for these places that are saying they're now hiring and stuff like that. I would get all the people that work there to actually go outside, like miss a full week of work, and demand not only to be compensated for that week, but also for a new version of their contract where they can negotiate being there for a set number amount of time. At least this way it'll give more incentive and concern for the worker or employee. Yeah. Really, the other part of it is you probably should have something in place where if someone gets fired, because I know you can collect unemployment, but I think if someone gets fired from somewhere before the 3 months is up, they need to be compensated by the company because you can't just pull the rug. Like I'm telling you, at that place from the one I was with before the retailer, I had no idea I was going to be gotten rid of that day. You know, like I get called and he says we're going to let you go. You know, so that pulled the rug from under me, and I didn't get any compensation. I think there's something wrong with you can just throw people away and then you know you're out into the cold and if something happens to you. Oh well, we don't care. Like if these places are going to be selective with who they employ, they should show be forced to show some concern for them too. So I said I really care a lot about workers because I've worked for a lot of these different companies and I've seen firsthand how lousy they treat people. Um, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, and it can happen if enough people get behind it. But I just hate the fact that essential workers just get treated like garbage. I mean, you know, like it doesn't make any sense to me that a corporation would say, "Hey, person who is the sole reason that we're even successful, because if you didn't work this job, we wouldn't be able to make our billions of dollars. We're not going to give you a pay increase. We're not going to give you time to actually spend with your family, you know, paid leave, whatever. If you have a kid, we're you know you just work for us, and if you can't do what we want you to at every instance of every day, well, we can just replace you with somebody else." They shouldn't be allowed to think that a regular person is just expendable trash that they can treat, you know, in an inhumane manner. That's why I said unions really need to be revived. Like they need to come back because there are a lot of people that don't have any protections against this stupid stuff with these employers. Do I remember during the height of that pandemic, people were being accused of being too lazy to want to go back to work, and I'm like, these people are trying to stay away from a deadly disease. Like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like that's why I said at every turn, people just blame the workers. And the workers don't control, you know, as far as they control the economy in the sense that they're the ones who make the world go around on the as far as like, you know, they work all these different jobs, but they're not the ones who determine their wages. They're not the ones who determine their hours. You know, like I don't know, that's why the guy was upset me because it's like you're trying to blame me for something that I don't have control over. I can't pick if someone hires me. I can't pick if they put me on full time after I said I want to be on full time. Um, I mean, it's just crazy to me how people have such a antagonism toward each other, and it's like, why are you defending these billionaires and these corporations? Like, are they going to give you some kind of like medal for being their you know defender? It's weird. So I said there's a lot of employees that just I feel bad for them, which is why a lot of times I go to you know get something from a store. Maybe they give me something wrong. I usually um try to not say I don't know. I've never I guess that's why what bothered me last year was so disturbing because I've had problems as far as maybe people forget something, don't know where something is at the various places I've you know tried to get some good out of, and I've never directly tried to play a role in getting anyone fired. So it's just one of those things where, you know, you just you have to protect people. I can literally say for me today, I had a meeting for a job that hired me and they were telling me how they have been finding it very hard to find people to work. I'm telling you, that's coded language. When I started at that retailer last year, they said I was the first person out of the 3 or 4 they were supposed to interview that day that actually showed up, and they've had a hard time finding people. They had their little cute help wanted sign outside. I'm telling you, I hope you get the position and you enjoy it, but I'm warning you if it doesn't work out, remember what was done to me and remember that it is a confirmed scam scheme tactic where they go and they tell you that they need somebody, that they're looking for people, and then after a few weeks or a month, you're out of there. I'm telling you that's a real thing that they do. And it's a very pathetic and evil thing that they do. But I digress. Man, I'm telling you, every time I think about the opposition to like single payer and free college, I'm just like, people really like Americans. It's interesting how they always make it sound like they care about each other, and they never really show it in any direct way. Like, you have Americans that are against giving other Americans a pay increase. You have Americans that are against giving other Americans access to healthcare. Like, it's weird. But again, it shows you that people can live in the same place and have no regard or concern for their fellow man. I mean, even if it's something basic like, hey, this person wants a jobs program where, like, if you don't have a job, they have a list of them and you can get one and then you can work there instead of having to go and fill out all these applications. I mean, what person in their right mind would be against a jobs program where you can have a position no matter if you get fired from somewhere, you can keep trying somewhere else. I don't understand where anyone would be opposed to that, but there are people opposed to it. Okay, now I can understand why this is the case, because where the place is situated is very awkward, as it's like a 20-minute walk from the nearest train station. Also, the pay is like below the minimum wage as well. So that's how it occurred to me. Many people aren't interested in the position. I can't say I blame them, because like I said, when you look at how things just seem to be increasing in price over and over and over and over and over again, um, no one is going to be excited at the prospect of working somewhere and not actually making back what, like basically giving. They're not going to be incentivized to make less than what the bare minimum is, because that's really what the minimum wage is. It's a bare minimum. It is at the tiniest. This is the amount you have to pay people per hour, and a lot of times companies are trying to get out of paying that. Because remember, I told you that a lot of the richer people that live in the US, for example, they will hire illegal immigrants, and basically knowing that these people can get in trouble if they say to the law, hey, this person's here illegally, they'll have that person working for $2 or $3 an hour. I'm telling you, man, it's insane. Yeah, we have dude, immigration policy over here is awful. Like, we have so many nativists. They're like, send them back, send them back, send them back. But we have people who are rich. Just think about this: people that own like $1 billion, and they could easily pay anyone they want the minimum wage of 7, or if they're in my state, 18. They will purposely hire illegal immigrants, people that if they say the law, hey, this person is not here with documents, they can get deported, like in trouble with ICE. They will hire these people and then pay them $2 or $3 an hour. And it's all part of their same scheme, scam, trick to keep as much money for themselves. So like they'll actually save, let's see, in an 8 hour, how much is 7 times 8? Let me think for a second. 42, what, 49? Anyways, they'll go out of their way and save like 30 something dollars a day, and they're already millionaires and billionaires. So it's not like they're hurting. They can't afford to pay this person, but they'll go out of their way to save an extra 20 or $30 a day by paying this person less than minimum wage, and like not even half of minimum wage. with the threat of like, hey, if you are upset by the amount I'm paying you, you don't have to work for me anymore, person who's undocumented. But if you also say anything about the amount I'm paying you, I can go and tell customs or some other gazpacho agency that you're here illegally, and then you'll be deported and never see your family again. They really don't want to pay anyone anything, but they want people to be interested to do the positions they want. Exactly. That's why you have such fervent opposition to raising the minimum wage nationally, because a lot of corporations are moving from my state to places like Texas where the minimum wage is the bare minimum of that 7.25, so they can pay people less and earn more money for themselves. Yeah, it is a horrible position. But really, the whole concept of billionaires is here's a person who pretty much cheated people out of money and did everything they could to get themselves ahead. Because, like I said, you can like work here long enough 30, 40, 50 years and become a millionaire. Like, I know people who are elderly who have hundreds of thousands of dollars. What the issue here is that there are people who make so much because of like certain economic schemes they have where they have like these offshore bank accounts. They take their money and stick it in some account that's on another country, and then they're like, oh well, I don't have 100 million, I only have 20 million. The other 80 million is sitting up somewhere else. But one of the other schemes that they've practiced is not allowing people to unionize, because then they can actually negotiate getting a higher wage, and not paying people a higher wage because they want to save as many coins for themselves as possible. That's why these places will hire somebody part-time when they say they want to be there full-time. That's why these places will get rid of someone after a couple of weeks, even if they're not doing that bad of a job. Think about this, Megumi. You have 1 0 0 0 0 0 0, and you're like, well, I wouldn't mind having an extra $30 today. Let me hire an illegal immigrant to clean my home, or this other part of this building, and I'll give them $2 or $3 an hour instead of the usual requirement of 7.25, as according to the U.S. Federal minimum wage, so I can have an extra $4 an hour coming to my own pocket, even though I don't need it because I'm already very rich. Dude, I'm telling you, people and their scams and schemes, it's scary. Like the amount of stuff they do to get ahead. And it's like a lot of it's just so unnecessary. Like if I on my channel made, I don't know, 200,000 a year, right? And I want to, like, let's say I don't want to edit videos as much anymore. I want to just write a script and then somebody else can edit it for me. um and I have a person who like edits every video I do, right, Monday through Friday. I would pay them the regular, either the minimum wage or the living wage, and see if I couldn't afford, because 200,000 is still not the same as making the millions that these people do. But if I couldn't afford to pay this person, whatever the minimum wage is or a living wage is, are like two people, that I would just hire one person. So that's why I said jobs are supposed to be a thing that you have so you can take care of yourself. And when they're not able to do that for you, there's no point of having them. Because people always say, oh, something's better than nothing. But if you get the same result from nothing, right, which is you can't afford to take care of yourself, then how are you being benefited? Think about that, Megumi. If you don't work, right, you're unemployed, and then you work somewhere and you're still not able to afford a little one-bedroom shack, what's the point? How are you being benefited? The government has successfully turned us against each other. Oh yeah. Like I feel bad for a lot of poor people that live in like the South and just places like that, because there are a lot of decent people that live in other states, and they have this economic system where they're getting crumbs every hour. Well, the corporations over there just get bigger and bigger and bigger. Exactly. There definitely is no point in participating in the job, as you can't make enough money to sustain yourself. It's really crazy. Well, that's why I said the economic system over here is so trash. And people like I have proof of what I say. I can show you where all the homeless people are. I can show you about these jobs. I like this stuff is verified, and you have people who are like, just go to this state, just move over here. That guy said to move to Texas and make that it's a good idea for me to go to a state where I have no support system and make less than half of what I make out here. It's like, hey, go to Texas where you have no one that can help you if you get screwed, and make 7 an hour instead of 18 an hour. Great idea. Like I said, I'm a pro worker, pro union person, because I've seen how corporations treat their employees. Um, and I don't like that's why I said for me, I can't I can't be excited about the prospect of applying for more jobs because this just seems like a thing they do. They hire people and then they get rid of them after a couple of weeks. Well, from the moment I entered the stream and saw what he wrote, I already knew they were. But you get my point that we're trying to have a discussion where, like if you were relating what happened with you in this job or with other jobs you've had, I'm not going to go, you're picking bad jobs or why don't you just do this? Like that's why I said, like, I don't know why people can't just listen to the other person, respond to what they're saying, and just like give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, he was writing fan fiction. Well, maybe you got fired because the manager was outshined. Like, what? Just weird. That's why I said these strange people just appear during the day. Like, where do they come from? Megumi, you remember in Shadow where they have like the cutscene where he goes and he opens the pod or like that room and it's like a bunch of him sitting up in tanks? I really think these people are like that. They're all these like drones just cut from the same cloth that have the same artificial responses to issues where there's no depth or nuance or ability to comprehend things. They're like literal clones of each other. And they write such ridiculous stuff to where you're like, is a real human being at the end of that computer? I remember people had the fan theory that the one from SA2 was deceased, and the one from Heroes and onward is a like an android or a clone. I'm like, yeah, that Sega would really be stupid enough to have us play as a copy of him that they're never going to reveal to us is a copy as opposed to a real one. I believe that. Yeah. It's really crazy to think like what would have happened if he stayed gone like they originally planned. Like the I think I mentioned before the lineup for Heroes was like 6 teams. Um and him and what was it, Omega didn't even exist or weren't in the game. So I thought that was interesting. But really we just have a garbage economic system, and it's crushing a lot of people, and you have some people who really do become like incentivized to just put up with this forever. Like I'm not joking. I know people that are into their 40s, 50s, and like going into their 60s who really think you should just have stagnant wages. And if you can't make it, it's your fault because you didn't go to school and get price gouged. And it's it's just really sad how unsustainable this stuff is now. We have like a whole segment of people who just believe that if something bad happens to you, you did it to yourself. Like you could work every single day, Monday through Friday, for months, not be able to make your rent. And people are like, well, you chose to have a job where they didn't pay you enough. Like, no, you're you're literally looking for a place that you can afford with the amount you're given, and you can't find one. That's why I said I don't like sounding negative, and I really don't like making bad predictions or whatever because I try to some extent to not be just downtrodden on everything, but the way things are going, I don't see a scenario in the near future or in any time of any recent occurrence where I will be able to live by myself and support myself. I just don't see it. These jobs, if I get one, are going to just get rid of me after 2 or 3 weeks. Um, and a lot of these places, you apply to them and you're nothing back. So it, and not to mention, even if you stay with these places for months on end, which probably will not happen because these places have the hire to fire scheme, you still wouldn't be able to afford the apartments out there anyway. They can go and kick rocks if they think people should just accept minimum wages that can't take care of yourself. They aren't looking from the lens of reality. That's on them. Oh, we know they're not looking for reality because remember, the spin artist had convinced himself that I just quit working the jobs I had. And those conclusions are based off your own experiences that were negative. Yeah, and it's a recognizable pattern. Like you can't tell a person who every job they have, they only get to work there for maybe a few weeks or a month before the place lets go of them, either by firing them or just not keeping them on as a full-time person, and then expect them to believe, oh, this next job will hire me on permanently and I'll go off into the sunset. I don't buy it. And I have no reason to because we have seen the proof. We have seen these places, their schemes and their scams, and how little concern they have for their own workers. That's why I said we need to have more just we need to have more unions and organizing. And I just wish workers as a collective would just get together as a big 100,000 person group and just smash these corporations because they don't own you, they don't own me. We could work for them for 10 years and they still wouldn't care about us. um but like I said, we're the reason that they're even allowed to exist. And it's really sad that they treat the people who make their profit a thing that's actually doable in the way that they do. Because I would rather have a business where, let's say it's a small one, right? I've got 5 people working for me and they all can take care of themselves. We're raking in, loads of money, but everyone is like, if it's not split evenly, I know that each one of those 5 I have is still able to take care of themselves. They're all making like 3,000 a month, 4,000 a month. Um, you know, I'd rather have something like that than, oh well, too bad, so sad. You guys can't afford to your living standard. Well, guess you need a second job. Oh, I could pay you $3 more, but I gotta add that to my total. I'm not even joking. I read this one passage where owners of companies used to make like, God, I wish I could remember it. It was like 14% more than their employees, and now it's like 800%. It's just increased to levels of absurdity. Why do you think workers didn't don't ever do that? Are they afraid of losing their positions? In this hypothetical of them to mass just going on a strike or something, well, it probably would take several strikes. Like you have to go after the governor, right? Because this is someone who is basically the chief executive of the state, and he got into a lot of trouble over like being a hypocrite with regards to the virus. But you have to go after him. You have to go after these corporations. And really, what happens here is that people, I said before, they have these very mundane existences where they go to their job, they work their hours, they're able to afford the little stuff that they have, and then they go to sleep. A lot of people do not know the stuff that we're discussing here. They don't know that there is such a thing as you know contracts and negotiations, and they've just accepted the reality of a crappy system. And that's why I said it. You have to have someone or a set of people who are able to go into these businesses and talk to the employees that work there and look for people who are disenfranchised, because there's a lot of people who are disenfranchised with their job. But you have to look for them, you have to tell them about what you want to do, and you have to make some kind of accommodation for them, like, hey, we get where you might be a little afraid of this, but we want things to be better, and we really believe that if we get the entire network. I mean, imagine if somewhere like, um, like Amazon, right? All their workers said, "To hell with it. We're going on strike for the day." And like, even if it was just in one state, they would freak out. They'd be like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" But yeah, a big part of it is people don't know about it. They don't have anyone who's trying to do it. Like I said, a lot of people just have mundane existences, and I can't say I blame them because if I had a kid and other little responsibilities, I might not be as you know up to for doing something radical. But I really think if you get a group of people together, they crisscross this state, you can get the whole because no one is against making more money, especially if they're not some billionaire. And really, it's just one of those things where people don't do it because they don't know about it. They don't believe in it. It's not proposed to them. Gosh, working for Amazon wasn't exactly what I expected it was. It honestly is slave work. Yeah, and that's what disturbs me because Amazon accounts for more than half of internet purchases because they like own so much stuff on there. Like I bought a drink off of there one time and I couldn't even believe I was doing that because I've never ordered food or a something to consume off the internet before. So when you have these monopolies, right? They start to believe that hey, we're the best in the business. Nobody's ever going to bust us up. But the thing about Amazon is that whereas their website is something that people can just go on and order something, they need those truck drivers to drive their stuff around the whole state and deliver it. And if they don't have those people for a few days, for a week, for a month, not even for a month, but just like for a solid week, they're going to run into some big troubles and they're not going to be able to say, "Oh, we'll just fire these people," because then the next wave of people can say, "Okay, well, look, you can't fire everybody." So, like I said, you just have to get a whole group of people together. But really, what needs to also happen is you have to go back to having a government that actually takes care of the people, because the government, whether it's the state government, our state government, our governor, or our representatives, they're supposed to be the ones who point that out. They're supposed to be going to the governor, hey, you can't sit here and expect to get um, a successful career after you've sat here and let all these homeless people sit around the states and let companies hire someone on part-time so they don't have to pay them a full wage. You better get in front of this or we're going to end your career. That's the type of stuff you would see from politicians who hold each other accountable and who actually care about workers. But instead, what happens is they're all friends with each other. They all endorse each other. They're all playing the same ladder game of jockeying from one position. Oh, I was a representative, so now maybe I'll be governor or senator. And because of that, you don't see any concern for the people. And they're able to do this because most people don't pay attention to politics or who their elected officials are. You have a lot of people that can't even name their own governor. So, a lot of it just has to do with people not knowing stuff. And you do have people who've convinced themselves that this system is just the way things are, and it's not. Yeah, Amazon is slave work, absolutely. You can't go for a bathroom break. Are you kidding me? That's why I said you don't even have to be into politics to like understand how screwed up this stuff is. Where you have corporations that treat their essential workers like trash, right? Um, and you have politicians who are supposed to hold corporations accountable when they treat their workers improperly, but don't because the same corporations give them money to run for the different offices that they do. Like I said, when one of these people wants to run for office, they don't sit there and go and knock on doors and talk to regular people about what's affecting them. They go and sit up in a private wine glass dinner with a bunch of $30,000 plates and that's their fundraiser, not sitting and talking to people and actually speaking to regular individuals that they're supposed to be representing. No, they go and they meet with their billionaire buddies, their little donor friends, and they pump some money to their campaign and they represent them. And they're able to win partially because of the fact that most people don't vote in a lot of these midterms or different elections. Um, and really, it's such a disturbing scheme because I'm telling you, when I started to look at this stuff through the lens of like seeing the US as an oligarchy, I would sit there and I would watch various like speeches and things people were talking about. And I would notice how when a lot of them announce they're running for something or even running like during their campaign, they don't even talk about actual substantive things. Like you have politicians, they say, I want to restore the soul of America. I want to bring us together. It's like, this is all nebulous crap. What are you going to do to help workers? What are you going to do, um, to make sure that the God knows how many thousands of people that don't have health insurance in the U.S. actually can access a doctor? I mean, they don't discuss any of this stuff at all, and they do that on purpose because they know if they take positions like that, it'll upset their billionaire friends, and they won't get supported for the next campaign. That's why I said workers have to come together and they can collectively stick their foot in the backside of any of these corporations. Because in a true democracy, the people are the ones that matter the most, not 10 people that have $1 billion. Man, corruption is just so blatant over here. Oh man, it's been a really sad just state of affairs that we have here. I'm sure this week I'll apply for some more jobs and hear nothing back, or get hired for like 20 something days, and then here's your pink slip. And like I said, none of this is about being negative. um I'm just not someone who can notice a pattern and then pretend that I don't see it. I've watched people get fired from jobs and all these threats that they make, and I've seen some protests too. People are demonstrating and they're tired of being paid less than they can afford. It's it's just a constant struggle for workers to be treated decently. And unfortunately, they're really one of the most unprotected groups because they don't if they get fired, they don't have some other position they can just jump to. And like I said, all these different corporations, with as much as the people on top of them are earning, they can afford to bump people's salaries up by $2 or $3, or not have them working every single day from Monday through Sunday. Just there's a lot of stuff they can do, but they don't do it because they think they can get away with squeezing as much productivity out of people as humanly possible. And I'm not a fan of that. Which is why I was so upset with my representative, because here's a person who's pretty much angling from the same scheme of like, I'm gonna win not because people are so enthusiastically support me, but because voter turnout is low. Most young people don't vote. Um, and I don't have to campaign. I don't have to have a town hall. I don't have to knock on doors. I can just declare I'm running, get endorsed by all my buddies, and then yeah, and then now I'm in the house. And I think that's ridiculous and really absurd. But I don't know. I'll think of something as far as like another course of action for this stuff. Because like I said, I am seriously considering primary in that person. Like that what they're the fact that they have that seat is driving me more and more to like want to, you know, challenge them directly myself. Oh, Jem, you would show up at the last minute. Yeah. That's your style. You would magically appear. Why does Jem suddenly appear every time the end stream button is near? Let me give you an update on that congressional race. No, it's fine. Did you like the North Korea? Um, well, I think I asked you already. I don't know if I did. If you even saw it, 'cause I think I told you I was going to do that, and I did it, and you didn't say anything. Um, I watched my congressperson. Like I watched their like some interviews they have, and they are awful. Like every interview they do, they're talking about their hair and their significant other and making friends in Congress. It's dude, I would rather watch nails on the chalkboard than hear that person speak ever again. Oh yeah, very clueless. And I was talking about how because like I said, I'm getting more and more open to like, challenging them for that seat. But you know what it is that doing it for the first time, you're not used to all this stuff. Um, I was talking about how what's so disturbing to me is that one of the reasons these people get elected is because they have no real competition, right? They get endorsed by a bunch of already established politicians, and then suddenly people who look on the ballot, they only know that one name. So they're like, all right, well, I guess I'll vote for that. And as someone that was in that district all of last year, I didn't see one thing about a town hall. I didn't see one thing of like any of her um surrogates. Like I'm talking about like people who are not the candidate, but they're like related to them. So they go and they knock on doors or organize. None of that. Do grassroots only. Oh, I know they don't care, but they get rewarded for not caring because people are not involved with this stuff as much as they should be. Like imagine a candidate that goes to high schools and gets 18-year-olds registered to vote. Like expanding the electorate, like actually gets people who aren't even part of this to participate. They know that the less people that vote, the more likely they are to win. But like I said, a lot of it is just stuff that has to be ironed out, like getting your name on the ballot and fundraising and things of that nature. I know I called the FEC one time last year, and they were talking about having like a bank account or something. You know what I mean? Like there's like a lot of little logistical stuff to figure out. People don't understand, distracted by the nonsense. Need someone to explain to them. Well, Megumi doesn't even care about this type of stuff, and I still explained to him how corrupt our system was. He's apolitical, and even he was like, "Wow, that's awful." Let me see. I put my phone on the charger. I did good. No, I'm gonna probably compile a list of maybe 10 to 15 questions I have about like running. I want to ask the Secretary of State's office again. And then after that, I'll probably call back the FEC, figure out what exactly like how do you get an account that people can, contribute to if they want to. But like I said, I really believe if I can get because I already have somebody else that agreed that they're gonna campaign for me. If I can get at least maybe 4 or 5 people, and like they know what my positions are, and we all like knock on doors. I think that I could pull it off. Because like I said, this isn't even about like winning or anything. It's just I want actual issues that don't get addressed talked about. Well, I'd appreciate that, but I'm just trying to make sure that I'm well versed on all the issues and able to answer questions and um, like I said, if you've never done something before, there's always that like that worry, right? That little feeling of dread. But I I'd rather do it and not win than not have tried. I always make at least one attempt before throwing in the towel. No, I would try to run a campaign that's actually about various hey Jam, listen. I never got to tell you this. I don't think I did, but we have a jungle primary. So most states have it to where it's Democrat versus Democrat, in the primary. That Democrat that wins advances, Republican versus Republican. Like where each party has their own primary. Over here, we keep having elections where, because the state is so blue, it's two Democrats versus each other. So what I think is probably going to happen is if I'm able to get in like second place, my opponent will like then suddenly know, oh man, somebody else is running against me. And then all her little friends start funneling money into the campaign. And then, there's ads all over the place about I don't know what I'm doing, I'm incompetent, da 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 da. Da. And then I lose because of that. Basically, they've made it harder for people to beat incumbents because they're even if they run in the same primary as them, they still have to run against them again for another 4 months. Man, I'm just thinking about how crazy this all is going to be. Well, I mean, my thing is, and I get where people like look at the internet and they get excited and they think it matters, but um, Jank from TYT has what 5 million subscribers and he's still lost. So I'd be more interested in just going around the district itself and talking to people and telling them what I believe, whatever. And then I'd rather do it that way than probably the internet, since I think you're more like I think voters respond more in a more interested manner if they're directly speaking to the candidate. That's just my opinion. He's had no credibility. Well, you get what I'm saying, right? That he obviously has higher name recognition than I do, and he still got smushed. So I don't know. I'm what's a good way of putting it? I'm cautiously optimistic. Again, there's always that feeling of like having never done something before. Uh, but I'm not going to be too surprised if things don't go entirely as well as I would. But it is something that I'm definitely interested in doing. I just have to figure out the how to explain this. There's like a lot of little questions to figure out things they you are well spoken and logical. Oh, thanks. I'm just saying that there's a lot of stuff I want to figure out as far as making sure I'm operating within the means of the law uh before just fully going through it. That's why I said I'm gonna at some point this week call the Secretary of State again, follow his mannerisms. I actually have looked into various successful campaigns as far as like the different things that they did to win. Um, so for me, it's not. I don't really have a candidate I'm following as far as trying to emulate the mannerisms of. I just like my style. I think is just directly answering things and talking about stuff that I think is not discussed as much as it should be or at all. Yes, he always made jokes and connect with the people. Well, I mean, I've been told by one relative I'm not friendly, but I dispute that because the last job I had, I would say hello to all the different people that were up there and make little comments and have running gags and things of that nature. I think what it is that if someone comes to a place I am and they're not there to see me and I just bump into them, just like, oh, hello. Well, you know how it is when someone gets an idea of somebody, they just stick with it no matter how much evidence there is to the contrary. You know, they say one thing and do the other. But I'll try to do the China part of that segment probably if I can't do it this week, the next week. I know that was the part you really wanted to see. You were excited. Man, I'm just thinking about this race. Like I just like the idea of you run and then all these people who had no idea about like how many other countries have single payer and how many other countries have free college and how hard it is to even get in the political process because they make it cost so much to even try to have a campaign. I think that'd be a really interesting, productive use of time to like run a campaign that even if it doesn't win, it still spreads awareness of the fact that there's a lot of stuff that purposefully doesn't get talked about. We can't afford to give you free college, but we can afford 300,000 for war every year, 300 billion for war every year, excuse me. You saw what China did last week with yeah, I was going to make a video about it and then I got caught up with some other stuff. I might still do something about it probably. Jobs, college and housing. Yeah, I would make a whole pitch about the fact that you have these jobs that say they're hiring and then they get rid of somebody before the 3 month probation period is over. And housing's another issue because we have all these homeless people. We have no jobs program to give them, work if they want some without having to go through the ridiculous process we already have. And then we're building all of these houses that nobody can even afford. 4,000 for a little apartment building. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to go over. No path out. Hey, that's exactly right. They want you to just sit here and basically just put up with it. Oh well, you don't like it, too bad. Well, I'm trying to give people hope. I think, and like we haven't even discussed like how teachers barely get paid anything, despite the fact that they're supposed to be raising the next generation of workers and productive members of society. That's why I said like the type of campaign I want to run is something that I really think would be very productive as far as getting issues out there and like speaking about stuff that people don't usually talk about. That's why I said this stuff is well, you know what it is. I know that there's certain places that you can't campaign in, so I want to make sure that I don't, go into any areas where I'm not allowed to do that. But man, imagine if there's a campaign for the House where it's like this big coalition of workers and teachers and doctors and like it's all of the different, regular people just coming together to Don't worry, I'll bail you. Yeah, right. But imagine like all these various like underfunded people come together to say, yeah, we're tired of having a political system where people just run because they want to get a job that and they don't have any like actual desire to be there for us. Like imagine how crazy that would be to just have this huge group of different workers all together against the oligarchy and how expensive all this stuff is. Now they throw all this money on elections but not on helping actual people. That would be nuts. Most politicians are lawyers. They know the tricks. Well, I did want to go to law school at one point, so that's why I said I'll probably just call the Secretary of State again and ask some more in depth stuff, and then we'll go from there. But look, I'm about to get off of here. We've been going for almost 3 hours. I stayed on a little bit longer. You are free to make progress, or you are here to make progress. Okay, I stayed on a little bit longer to make sure that you could speak to me a bit because I really do have something I have to do in an hour. Um, so like I said, I'll probably try to figure out some more stuff by calling the Secretary of State again, and from there I'll try to figure out some ways to get more involved in the community before we if we go through with this. Sorry, next time Saturday. Yeah, I mean, hey, if the internet is working, sometimes it decides to work and not to work. But look, thanks for showing up. Same thing to Megumi, same thing to Akatsuki Merchant. And I hope this stream has taught us something about employment and how just crazy it is and how some of the people that respond to it don't really think too critically when they say things. Um, what's my man? I haven't used Discord in so long. I'll figure out what the password for my thing was, and then I'll send you my tag if I go on there again. So thanks for showing up, and have a good rest of your day.